Good evening. I hope all of you are doing well. Today we're going to be learning Maseches Rosh Hashana Daf Lamed, and we're going to be going almost halfway down on Lamed Aleph, Amud Aleph. We're going to try and overshoot a little bit each day, so that on Shabbos, the only Daf Yomi that we'll be learning on Shabbos is Mamish the Siyum and Shul, and that's it. So today we're going to learn a blot and a half, but just so you can look a little bit as to what is ahead, just take a look at Lamed Beis Amud Aleph. And Lamed Beis Amud Beis. So we have a lot of extra work to do. Usually the good sign of very, very fat Gemaras like this is that they're often agaritas and they move quickly, but you still need to read all of the words. So it can be time consuming. Today's sugya is a nuanced sugya about when shofar was blown after the Churban Beis HaMikdash, only in front of Beis Din, only when Beis Din was open, in front of them, not in front of them. Is there a difference between Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashana? So we can already picture a matrix table of Rosh Hashana, Yom Kippur, Beis Din open, Beis Din closed, and the various shitas therein, two different shitas, which we'll see that will flow throughout the Amud Aleph until the Mishnah, and then we'll switch gears. Says the Gemara, we're on the very bottom line, last few words on Chav Tes Amud Beis. We had said in our Mishnah that Amru Lo, that there was a shita in the Tanaim that had said Echad Yavne ve'Echad Kol Makom Sheyesh Bo Beis Din, that this was the shita of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And if you want to just look back in the Mishnah to see the Marimakom on the third line of the new parak, it said Hiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai Sheyuhu Token B'Chol Makom Sheyesh Bo Beis Din. So let's give some parameters. What does it mean in any place that there is a Beis Din? What does that mean? So we have a Beis Din in Chicago. Well, they're not open right now. They're closed. So how does that work? So it says the Gemara, Amar Rav Huna, turning to the top of Lamed Amud Aleph, V'im Beis Din, it has to be done with Beis Din. It says Rashi, V'im Beis Din hu detakinan. That's when they are going to be blowing shofar after the Churban Beis HaMikdash, only in a place. This is Rosh Hashana, Shechalios B'Shabbos, the only time that so we live in Chicago. Why is it that we didn't blow shofar on Rosh Hashana in the past years when Rosh Hashana coincided with Shabbos? Says the Gemara, Mai v'im Beis Din bifnei Beis Din. It means in front of Beis Din. La'afuke shelo bifnei Beis Din, meaning you have to be in their presence. That's what Rav Huna is saying, is that when Rosh Hashana falls out on Shabbos, you can blow shofar in the presence of Beis Din, but not when you are not in the presence of Beis Din. So let's say that we had three dayanim sitting on the Mizrach, great Gevaldik, then you can blow shofar. But if the three dayanim are in another shul, no dice. You're not allowed to blow shofar. It's not allowed. Does it have to be a Beis Din Kavua? Great Shaila. We'll see that that's going to come up. It seemingly might be after Beis Din, might be a Beis Din Kabul. We'll see shortly. So it says the Gemara on the second line of Lamed Amud Aleph, Masi Rava. Rava says, hang on one second. Let's look at our Mishnah. At our Mishnah, what did it say on the sixth line of our Mishnah on Chav Tes Amud Aleph? It said, Ve'od zos haisa yisera, Yerushalayim yisera al Yavna, that there was an additional unique thing about Yerushalayim. My ve'od zos. What do you mean? What do you mean additional? Additional implies that there are two things being said. There was the first, and then there's the additional. But that's not Ilema Kitakatani. If you want to say that the distinction that we're talking about when we say ve'od is that which was listed in our Mishnah, that in Yerushalayim, that you're okay, we're all throughout Yerushalayim and in Yavna only with a Beis Din. If that's true, then it shouldn't have said ve'od. It should have just said zos mi baile. Ella, maybe the difference between Yerushalayim and Yavna is that the Yerushalayim token yechidin, that in Yerushalayim even individuals can blow shofar. Ubi Yavna ain't token yechidin, and that in Yavna. That in Yavna you're not allowed. Only people, only the Baal Tokea could be Tokea. So says the Gemara, no way. Ubi Yavna ain't token yechidin. That can't be because I have a Maisa Shahaya. We know from Rabbi Yitzchak that people were Tokea in Yavna. He also Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef, when he got to Yavna, Omar Kimisayim Shlicha de Tzibur Tkiya b'Yavne. When the Shliach Tzibur would finish the Tkiyos in the city of Yavne, everyone pulled out their shofar and Lo Shama Inish Kol One Mikal Tekoaya de Yichidoi. You couldn't hear yourself think. Everybody was blowing shofar. It's like being in a concert where like everyone around you screaming and you start talking, you can't even hear yourself. So in Yavne, everyone was blowing shofar, even as Yechidim. So we see that the distinction between Yavne and Yerushalayim cannot be that in Yerushalayim Yechidim were allowed and in Yavne they were not allowed. Rabbi Yitzchak says that wasn't the Metzias. In Yavne they certainly were being Tokea. Elalav, it must therefore be to be Yerushalayim token bein bizman Beis Din uvein shelo bizman Beis Din. It must be that in Yerushalayim one could be Tokea Again, not the language of bifnei bezdin at the top of the page, but they could be token bein bisman bezdin when bezdin is open, and bein shelo bisman bezdin even if they were closed. Ube Yavne, that was only true in Yerushalayim, but in Yavne, bisman bezdin in. Shelo bisman bezdin lo. So that would be the kula of Yerushalayim over Yavne. That in Yerushalayim, whether or not bezdin was open, you can be tokeya. But in Yavne, that's not correct. When they were open, you could be tokeya, but when they were closed, you could not. It says the Gemara, ha bisman bezdin miha token ve'afilu shelo bifnei bezdin. The implication of this shita is that in Yavne, bisman, that bezdin was open, you could be tokeya. That implies that even if you're not in front of them. And if that's true, then that's a kasha and Rav Huna at the top of the page. Here we have an implication in this understanding of the Mishnah as to what the differences are between Yavne and Yerushalayim. The implication that we just saw in the 10th line of Lamed Amud Aleph, the second to last of the short lines, is that Va'afilu shelo bifnei bezdin, that even not in front of bezdin you could be tokeh. But look at the top line of our Gemara. Ma'avi im bezdin. What did Rav Huna say? Bifnei bezdin la'afuke shelo bifnei bezdin delo. So then Rav Huna has a kasha from a brisa. Says the Gemara, lo, you've misunderstood the brisa, and we could understand the brisa in the following way: Dilu Yerushalayim token bein bifnei bezdin bein shelo bifnei bezdin. The taka in Yerushalayim, it doesn't make a difference if you are bifnei bezdin and not bifnei bezdin. Changing the language again, we're talking about it in front of, not just when bezdin is open. And at the very first of the long lines, ubiyavne bifnei bezdin in shelo bifnei bezdin lo, and there's no kasha in the shita of Rav Huna. And this line of Rav Huna that we saw on the very top of this page where he said Ve'im Bezdin, we're not even sure that he said it on this sugya. See, this is one of the hard parts of Gemara, is that the Amoraim would give a shiur a couple of hundred years potentially after the Mishnayos. So here we have Rav Huna, who wasn't a first century Amor. I think he was a third century Amor, but there were a few Rav Huna, so it's sometimes hard to tell. I don't know which one this was, but usually we don't see a Rav Huna in the first century of the Amoraim. The problem is that Rav Huna gave a shiur, and he gave a shiur, and his statement at the end of shiur that everyone had to memorize, his memra was V'im Bezdin. And somebody messed up somewhere because one person thought that it was talking about our sugya of Rosh Hashana that falls out on Shabbos. What does Rav Huna say? Only V'im Bezdin. But there's another version of where Rav Huna's line applied. Says the Gemara, first long line, Ika Damasni Lahad Rav Huna Aha. Some say that Rav Huna's line of V'im Bezdin wasn't talking about our case of Rosh Hashana Shechalios b'Shabbos, but rather the following. The pasuk writes, that on Yom Kippur you have to hear shofar throughout the land. Well, not everyone in the world. You don't have a Baal Tokeh every Daled Amos. It's not Chabad in West Rogers Park on Rosh Hashanah every corner, different time, every 5 minutes. You could just literally could walk out on your porch and be Yotze. It wasn't like that. So then says the Gemara, Melamed, Shekol Yachid v'Yachid Chayv Litko. It had to be the case that everyone had to be Tokeh because there was no other way for people to be Yotze. It's not like our culture. It was a totally different world. So says the Gemara, on this we have the line of Rav Huna. Rav Huna, V'im Bezdin. When do we say that you can be Tokeya throughout the entire land? On Yom Kippur, that's only true of V'im Bezdin, my V'im Bezdin. So the way the Gemara understands Rav Huna here is a little different. Third line of the wide lines, quarter of the way down. Bisman Bezdin, only at the time when Bezdin is open, La'afuke shelo Bisman Bezdin dilo. But when Bezdin is closed, it does not count at all. And this is a totally different version of Rav Huna, one that does not speak at all to the discussion of our Mishnah about Rosh Hashana Shechalios b'Shabbos. But on this shita, on version 2 of Rav Huna, we have a question still. We're 5 lines into the wide lines. Masiv Rava asks, hold on one second. Tkiyas Rosh Hashana v'Yovel doches HaShabbos b'gvulen ish ubeso. Very strange language. Let's start with the easy stuff. The tkiyos of Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur, which falls out on Yovel, they are doche es HaShabbos midoraisa b'gvulen outside of the Beis HaMikdash ish ubeso. What does this language remind you of? Ish ubeso? Man and his wife. Chanukah time, right? Ner ish ubeso. So says the Gemara, my ish ubeso. What is meant here? What is intended by this idea that when Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that you can be Mechal Shabbos to be Tokeh for Ishu Beso? So does Ishu Beso mean Yilema Ish Ve'ishto? You want to say that it means that there's a chiyuv of Tkiyah for men and for women? For sure not. Itza mi mechayva. by women, do we have an obligation whatsoever to be tokeya? V'ha mitzvah saseh she'azman gramahi. Blowing shofar is a mitzvah saseh she'azman grama. V'chol mitzvah saseh she'azman grama nashim peturos. It can't be that when this brisa says ishu beso in regards to being tokeya on Rosh Hashana and on Yom Kippur, it can't be that it's talking about women. It doesn't make any sense because it breaks the rules that we normally hold by women, which is that they're exempt unless otherwise noted. That's the standard. The example I gave last night was Kiddush on Friday night. That's the exception. Fine. But typically speaking, in halacha l'maisa by shofar, a woman is exempt from the mitzvah of shofar because it's done during the day only. So that can't be it. So therefore, says the Gemara, once I find my spot, here we go. Says the Gemara about a third of the way down, elalab. It doesn't mean ishu beso proper elalab. It means ish be beso, that a man can blow shofar even in his own home. Ve'afilu shelo bisman bezdin. Even when bezdin is closed, kasha and Rav Huna. Version 2 of Rav Huna was that when do we say that you can be tokeya on Yom Kippur? That's only bifnei bezdin. That's only bisman bezdin when bezdin is open. That's not true according to this brisa that we just saw about Yovel, about the Yom Kippur and Yovel. Kasha says the Gemara, lo, lav dafka, to learn the brisa that way. Le'olam bisman bezdin. Who said? Where did you get that from? Who says it's shalom bisman bezdin? You made that up. I mean, I guess in theory you could make such a deal, but it's not correct. You're just not right. It's not a very strong answer in Lumdus, but it's only because the question wasn't a strong question to start with. So the Gemara says you're wrong. No, it's not right. And really, what the brisa means is that only bisman bezdin can he be tokeya throughout the country, but certainly his wife is exempt. Next question, Masiv Rav Sheshes. We had said Shaveh HaYovel, the Yom Kippur that's in a year of Yovel is similar to the Rosh Hashana in regards to Tzkiya Brachos, in regards to the Tzkiyos, and in regards to how many Brachos there are in Shmona Esrei. However, there are differences. Ella, what are the differences between Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashana? Ella shebe Yovel token bein bebezdin shekichu boes achodesh. That by Yovel, by Yom Kippur, you can be tokeya in a bezdin where the Kiddush HaChodesh of that month had taken place, ubein bebezdin shelo Kiddush HaChodesh, in any bezdin. It doesn't make a difference which bezdin. V'chol yachid v'yachid chayav litkoa. And because it's Yom Kippur, and that's what the pasuk just said earlier, where the pasuk said ta'aviru shofar b'chol artechem, therefore v'chol yachid v'yachid chayav litkoa. However, even though there are similarities between Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashana, there is a difference in this regard. Uber Rosh Hashana, lo hayu token ela bebezdin shekichu boes hachodesh. But by Rosh Hashana, the only place you could be tokeya is in the actual bezdin that actually had the Kiddush HaChodesh. Let's be specific and clear. We're talking about Shabbos that fell out on Rosh Hashana. That's the case we're talking about. You can only be tokeya in that case when you're in the actual bezdin where the Kiddush HaChodesh took place, and because it's not Yom Kippur, therefore the ein kol yachid v'yachid chayav liskoa, that the individuals are not obligated to be tokeya. So says the Gemara as follows. Let's get to our question because we brought a brisa to question Rav Huna. My ein kol yachid v'yachid chayav liskoa. We said by Rosh Hashana that there's no obligation for the individuals to be tokeya. If you want to say to be Yovel token yechidin, uve Rosh Hashana in token yechidin, that by Yovel we do allow for individuals to be tokeya, but by Rosh Hashana we don't allow it. The same story that we saw above rejects this premise. The says the Gemara exactly halfway down on the page, almost exactly a little bit more. Says the Gemara that this is not possible to assume that on Rosh Hashana that Yechidim were not being tokeya. V'haki asa Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef. Omar, he said when he got to Yavne, ki Yavne Messiah shlicha de tzibur tki asa beyavne. When the shliach tzibur, when the Baal Tokeh would finish all of the halachic tkiyos, lo shama inish kol one mikal tekoaya de yechidoy. The people couldn't hear anything at all. It was so loud. Everyone was being tokeh as yechidim on Rosh Hashana. So we see that the distinction that you tried to make as a difference between the worlds of Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashana is incorrect. And really, even a yachid could blow shofar on Rosh Hashana. Elalav, it must therefore be that the difference between Yovel, between Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashana is different. Te'ilu be Yovel, when it comes to the Yom Kippur and Yovel, token, bein bisman bezdin, bein shelo bisman bezdin, that one can be tokeya, even if bezdin is shut down for the day. Bezdin, it's a 9 to 5 job, and they go home at 6 o'clock. 5:01, you're done. Whatever, they go 6:01, you're done. You're not allowed. Over Rosh Hashanah, things are different. Bisman Bezdin in. When it comes to Rosh Hashanah, that falls out on Shabbos. When Bezdin is open, you can be Tokeya. But let's say it's after that. Shelo Bisman Bezdin lo, they're not allowed. So what's our question? Let's get to it. It's a long-winded question. It says the Gemara, Katani Mihas. Katani Mihas is always a line that means we're going to now refocus on something in the Brisa that will be the punchline of our question. Katani Mihas, therefore the Brisa seems to indicate over here, the Yovel, in regards to Yovel, Yom Kippur and Yovel, what did we say? Bein Bisman Bezdin, Bein Shelo Bisman Bezdin. Oh, so that doesn't work in regards to Rav Huna, because Rav Huna version 2.0 said that it has to be when Bezdin is open. Yet here, in our understanding of the differences between the Yom Kippur of Yovel and Rosh Hashanah, it seems to be that even Shelo Bisman Bezdin is going to be okay. So says the Gemara, lo, you misunderstood. Really, lo olam bisman bezdin. Really, even in this case of the distinctions of Yovel and Rosh Hashanah, that by Yovel, when we said that it's mutter to be tokeya, even when you're not at the right zman of bezdin, really the halacha is that it's not that way. It has to be only bisman bezdin. V'hachik tani. And here is the pshat in the brisa. B'Yovel, bisman bezdin token, bisman bifnei bezdin. B'Yovel, bisman bezdin token, bein bifnei bezdin, bein shelo bifnei bezdin. The by Yovel, it has to be that bezdin is open, but you don't have to be in front of them at the same time. This is a much easier way to understand the brisa. But the Rosh Hashanah token, bisman bezdin u bifnei bezdin. And on Rosh Hashanah, we need a double requirement to be able to blow shofar. Not only does it have to be at a time that bezdin is open, but it even has to be at a time that you are in front of bezdin. I know this is very nuanced, but the short version of this Gemara is that we didn't know where Rav Huna's comment that it has to be before Bezdin took place. There are two possibilities. Both of them withstood the tests of the Gemara. And let's just review. The first version of Rav Huna is that Rav Huna is teaching us that when we say that the shofar can be blown on Rosh Hashanah, Shechalios b'Shabbos, it has to be by a Bezdin. It is mamish bifnei Bezdin, in their presence. However, version 2 isn't talking about this really directly at all. It's talking about a different brisa, not our Mishnah, about the comparison of Yovel to the world of Rosh Hashanah. And there, the shita is that it has to be bisman bezdin and not necessarily bifnei bezdin. So there would be two different understandings of Rav Huna, and they argue against one another. The two, they're not exactly the same shitas, but that is how we would understand the Gemara up until now. In Itmar, we're 2/3 of the way down. Itmar is always a keyword to remind us that we're learning about Amoraim. All of this has really been our attempt to understand one Amora of Rav Huna, but now let's get to some psak. Itmar Nami. We have a very similar statement in the Amoraim Amar of Chia Bar Gamda Amar Rav Asi ben Shalom Amar Rebbe. Ein token, we are not tokeya. Ela kolzman shebezdin yoshmin. Everybody has to be sitting. Sitting literally? Let's see. Boy Rav Zera. Nina ru la'amod v'lo amdu mahu. You know, sometimes when there's only one line left of Daf Yomi, everybody starts closing their Gemaras. That's normal, right? It happened in Sanhedrin also. So what happens if you want to be Tokeya? They're still sitting in their seats, but they've got the Gemaras closed already. The Shulchan Aruch is closed. The Shulchan Aruch that wasn't written yet. It wasn't, all right, whatever Sfarim they were looking at. They had a Chumash. I don't know what they had. So says the Gemara, what did we do if Nina Ru La'amo? They're stirring a little bit. They're ready to stand up, but they didn't stand up yet. Below Amdu, Mahu. Do we say, says the Gemara, Bezdin Yoshvin Ba'inam, we mamish need them sitting down in their chairs, V'ha'ika, and even though they've stopped learning, but still they're sitting in their seats, O Dilma, or perhaps Zman Bezdin Ba'inam Beleka. No, we just need it to be the actual Zman of Bezdin, and they're done. They're done for the day. They're not taking any more Dinei Torah, Beleka, and because they're not taking any more Dinei Torah, you can't be Tokeya. That is a teku we don't know. We had also said, just flipping back quickly to our Mishnah on Chav Tesam and Beis, we had said at the end of the Mishnah, Ve'od zos haise Yerushalayim yisera al yavne shekol irshi roa v'shomas v'krova v'yechololavo token. That all of the cities that can see, that can hear, that are close to and that you can reach are token. We will see that these are not separate requirements. They all have to apply at one time. It's not this or that or that or that. It's this and that and that. And if you haven't checked all the boxes, you're not allowed to be Tokeya. And that's what the Gemara is going to do over here at the 2 dots, 3/4 of the way down, 3 lines before the next Mishnah. Says the Gemara at the 2 dots, What does roa mean? If a person can see Yerushalayim, give me some parameters. Says the Gemara, prat liyosheves benachal, mamish eyesight. If you live in a valley out of the eyesight of Yerushalayim, then you're done. Then you're not allowed to blow shofar. Shoma'as, what does it mean that you have to hear? Prat liyosheves berosh hahar. If you live on a very, very high, tall mountain, so maybe you can't hear, and maybe you have to test it. Maybe you can see, but you can't hear, and then you will not be allowed to blow shofar. What does krova mean? Prat liyosheves chutz l'tchum. You have to be within 2,000 amos, which is about 3,500 feet, which is about a little bit more than 3/5 of a mile. It's it's a good walk. It's a 12 to 15-minute walk. It's pretty far. And it says the Gemara next, v'yachola lavo. What does it mean? You have to be able to get there. Prat lemafsik le'nara. Even if you lived 20 feet away from the Beis HaMikdash, but if that 20 feet was a moat and you couldn't get there, you're done. You can't. I don't care what you can see. It doesn't matter. I don't care what you can hear, and I don't care if you're within the tchum. So it's this and this. It's like the operators. For those, and when you're writing formula, it's this and that and this and this. All of them are requirements in order to be tokea, and that brings us to the next Mishnah. Next Mishnah starts Berishona haya halulav nital b'mikdash shiva uv'medina yom echad. Originally, the lulav was brought in the mikdash for 7 days, but outside the mikdash ubimedina was only brought for 1 day. Yishachara beis hamikdash, with the churban of the beis hamikdash, unfortunately, Hiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai she'ehei lulav nital b'medina shiva zecher lemikdash. He made a mitzvah derabbanan that it should be nital b'medina shiva zecher lemikdash, that it should be brought for 7 days. This is what we do. We don't just only do the mitzvah of lulav and esrog for the arba minima for 1 day. We do it for the duration of the holiday, minus, of course, Shabbos. But other than that, we're going strong. Yeah, you got to buy some extra ravos because they're soon going to die, and then you try to wrap it in a towel with some water, and then mold grows. Well, it's always trying to strike the balance. So that's what the Gemara says is our requirement. And then the Gemara ends with something that we'll dig into today with a little bit more depth. Yom hanef kulo aser. Yom hanef is something that we learned about. Where did we learn about it?
This is the exact mission quoted.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Sukkah Mem Aleph. That's what it
said. It seems like a direct copy. I mean, I don't know the Mishnah by heart, but
no, but it was presented as its own Mishnah, or it was presented as a Ditnan. I have it right here. Kash and Maisa, David Merzel. The exact same Mishnah in the middle of Mem Aleph on Sukkah, word for word. Why do we do that? Maybe if we all thought like David, I would have thought about this question when I'm the one who taught it. I should have asked. That doesn't make me feel any better. So we have, okay, fine. We have the same exact Mishnah quoted twice. That's a kasha. Brilliant. Let me know when you find an answer. That's great. Thank you for raising it. So the Mishnah says at the end of Yom Hanef Kulos. Yom Hanef, let's give a little bit of background. We know that there is an Isser called Chadash. Chadash is to eat grains prior to the Hakrava of the Korban HaOmer on the 16th of Nisan. In the time when there is no Beis HaMikdash, this is what we're talking about here, where there's no Beis HaMikdash, the Gzeira was V'sheyehe Yom Hanef Kulo Aser, that the 16th of Nisan, Yom Hanef, the day of the Hakrava of the Omer, that full day, all of the 16th of Nisan, it is still an Isser Chadash. It is not yet Yashan. All the grains are still Aser for that day until the beginning of the 17th of Nisan. Now, this is a strange chumrah because, as we'll soon see, the Mishnah indicates elsewhere that Chatzos Hayom was enough time to wait. Why was he waiting the whole time? Let's dig in. Says the Gemara, before we get to the Yom Hanef discussion, says the Gemara, 10 lines from the bottom at the open of the Gemara, Lamed Amud Aleph, how do we know that we have to do a Zecher LeMikdash anyways? We have this all the time, right? Zecher LeMikdash Kehillel. There's just so many different examples of Zecher LeMikdash. This is the general Marim Makom that we use to indicate the need for a halachic need, not a doraisa, but a halachic need to have these types of artifacts in halacha to be real, that they should be happening. When things are very extended for you, when I heal you from your ills, ne'um Hashem, ki nidche kira'u lach Tzion, he doresh ein la, that when you're being pushed away, Tzion has no doresh. Tzion has no doresh, mechalal, the boy, it needs someone to think about it. It needs someone to tend to it. That's why we have things that are zecher lamikdash. Why do we need a pasuk? It should have been intuitive, but the Gemara does present a pasuk. Let's dig into the Yom Hanef. Says the Gemara 7 lines from the bottom. Hey, Yom Hanef kulo aser. That when it comes to the 16th of Nisan, that we do not allow the eating of any of the grains on that day. We treat that day as chadash and not yashan. The grains are not allowed. Says Gemara, my time. Why was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai so strict about the 16th of Nisan? The Gemara gives a good svarim. Hey, Yibana Beis Hamikdash. Amen. So says the Gemara, V'yomru, what are people going to say? If you say that you're allowed to eat it first thing in the morning on the 16th, so they'll make an error. V'yomru ishtakad, last year, before the Beis Hamikdash was rebuilt, Milo achalnu beheir mizrach. The second the sun came up on the 16th, we all ate our toasted grains from this year's batch. It's the 16th of Nisan. There's no Beis Hamikdash, so we're just going to look at the day of the 16th of Nisan. Grains are good to go. The chadash becomes yashan. But achshav nami nechal. In this year, even though we have a Beis Hamikdash, we'll make the error and assume that one is allowed to eat the grains first thing in the morning. Below yade, and they won't know. Most people are not very knowledgeable. They won't know the ishtakad lo hava omer heir hamizrachitra. There was no hakravasa omer, so the sun was the matir, but hashta the ika omer. Now that there is a korban omer matir, it's the korban omer that's going to allow it. So it says the Gemara, okay, I hear what you're saying, but when exactly would the Beis Hamikdash be built that your concern should be so real? Demivni emas. When would this Beis Hamikdash be built where you're so concerned about people making the error that in the morning of the 16th they ate their grains? Ilema, 4 lines from the bottom, if you want to say that the Beis Hamikdash was built on the 16th, once the sun comes up, it's mutter. There was no Beis Hamikdash when the sun came up. Then there's no reason why you can't eat the grains at that time. There's no hakravas omer by sunrise. Good, eat it, no problem. Elo, you're right. It must be the Ibni B'Chamesar. Maybe the Beis Hamikdash was rebuilt on the 15th of Nisan. Well, if that's true, says the Gemara, then Mechatzos Hayomu L'Halan Lishterei. Then why is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai being more strict than we were even with the Beis Hamikdash? What does that mean? Tatznan, the Mishnah writes, Harichokin, people who lived far away from Yerushalayim, and they didn't know exactly when the Korban Omer was brought on the 16th of Nisan. So them, Mutar Mechatzos Hayom Ulahalan, Lefishain Bezin Mitzatzlim Bo. The Korban HaOmer was always brought by Chatzos Hayom. So says the Gemara, come on, Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai. If you're going to make a gzeira, it's got to make sense. Why would you be more machmir than the actual hakravas ha'omer? It doesn't make any sense. Says the Gemara, for one reason. Lo nitzracha de'ivni b'chameser samach l'shkia sacham aynami de'ivni b'lelia. What we're concerned about is if the Beis Hamikdash was born right before Tzeis HaKochavim, or it was built at night, which that's hopeful. It adds another part of the day when the Beis Hamikdash can be rebuilt. I don't know. We've seen other shitas in the Gemara, I believe. So then the Gemara says over here, what we were concerned about is that in order to bring this grain behakrava, there's a lot of prep that needs to take place. And if the Beis Hamikdash is built at 3 a.m., then someone might wake up and say, oh, it's the 16th of Nisan. I live in the middle of nowhere. Good to go. I can eat the grains. The chadash has become yashan. That's what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was concerned about. Says the Gemara, and a second possible answer, Rabbi Yochanan bar Yitzchak Amar, he says, really, it's not because of that, but really, the reason why we're so strict on the 16th of Nisan isn't because of the rabbinic considerations, but rather, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, B'shitas Rabbi Yehuda Amra, top of Lamed Amid Beis, that really Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai holds like Rabbi Yehuda de Amar. What does Rabbi Yehuda say? Ad etzem hayom hazeh. What does the pasuk mean when it says until this day? Ad itzumo shel yom, until this very day. The kasavar ad ve'ad bichlal. That when we say ad itzumo shel yom, that the grains are going to be problematic, it's inclusive of the 16th of Nisan, no matter what. All he was doing was extending the din. Says the Gemara, wait a second. Wait, there's 2 problems here. Here's problem number 1. Umi savar la kavase. Does Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai actually hold like Rabbi Yehuda? The miflag poligale. Rabbi Yehuda attacked Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai. Ditznan, fourth line of Lamed Amid Beis. Mishachar Beis Hamikdash, from the time the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Hiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai sheyehe Yom Hanef Kulo Aser, very similar to our Mishnah. Yet this Mishnah adds something new. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, what are you talking about? A rabbinic injunction? That was Rav Yehuda held that it's an Isser Doraisa for Chadash to become Yashan on the 16th. You have to wait till the close of the 16th of Nisan, and then everything can be fine. So what do we see in this machlokes? We see that Rav Yehuda looks at Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai and says, how can you tell me this is Derabanan? It's Doraisa. And then says the Gemara, Hasam, Rav Yehuda Huda Katai. Rav Yehuda made an error. Ihu, Rav Yehuda thought, Savar, Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai midrabanan ka'amar. He thought that we were only talking about a din derabanan, but that's not the case. Velohi midoraisa ka'amar. Really, Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai was of the opinion that min haTorah, you are not allowed to benefit from the Chadash until the 17th of Nisan. So says the Gemara, the obvious question from our Mishnah, Veha Hiskin Katani. It says that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was Hiskin. He made a takana that the Yom HaNef was Aser. The word takana is synonymous with a din derabanan. How can you tell me that we are looking at Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai wrong? Really, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is all Doraisa. And there's no machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. They're on the same page. And that's really the answer of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak from the very bottom line of Lamed Amid Aleph as to why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says the 16th of Nisan is off limits for Chadash, because really Odes Doraisa. What about the fact that it says Vehiskin Katani? That's our Mishnah. It's a takana. So answers the Gemara, my Hiskin, Dorash Vehiskin. What it means is that he was just expounding on the drasha, and then Hiskin, he explain to everyone what the halacha was. Is it a poorer usage of the word? Is it a double usage of the word? Good for other times to discuss. But either way, the halacha seems to be that Chadash is not allowed on the morning of the 16th of Nisan. It is in the times of the Beis Hamikdash allowed at Chatzos because of Hakrav Asa Omer. Otherwise, seemingly either for Derabanan purposes version 1 or the Oraisa purposes version 2, according to Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai, one is not allowed to benefit from Chadash on the 16th of Nisan. Next, says the Mishnah 12 lines down, but Rishon Ha'im Makablan Edus HaChodesh Kol HaYom. It used to be, we saw this as well. Was this another Mishnah, that David? Beitza Daf Daled. No, there's no Mishnah on Beitza Daf Daled. And the only reason I know that is because there was a Mishnah 2 pages earlier, but I don't believe we had a Mishnah that early in the Masechta. So it says the Gemara that we had learned that initially they used to be Makabel Edus HaChodesh Kol HaYom. The entire day they would take Kiddush HaChodesh, no problem, Edus HaChodesh. Pamachas, one time though, Nishto Edim Ilavo, one time the Edim came late, and then V'niskalkalu HaLevim B'shir, and therefore there was an error made as to what Shir Shel Yom the Levim would sing. Therefore, hiskinu shelo yimekablan ela ad hamincha. They would only take until mincha. Bo edim mina mincha olamala. And if the edim were to come after that point, mina mincha olamala, then noagin oso ayom kodesh ulamachar kodesh. If it became that late, we made the halachic assumption that they weren't going to come, and therefore today and tomorrow would be Rosh Hashana. However, Mishachara Beis Hamikdash, when the Churban Bayis unfortunately took place, Hiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai sheyu mekablan edus hachodesh kol hayom. Why? What's going on here? So it says the Gemara first of all, Ma kilkulu halavim b'shir. What mistake did they make? We know the context, which is that the Eidim were shohelava. They took a long time to get to where they needed to be, or they only saw the moon when they saw the moon, but they showed up at a bad time. So the Levim made a mistake. What was the mistake? Says the Gemara Machlokes. Hacha, here in Bavel, Targimu Shelo Amra Shira Kol Iker. They didn't say anything. They didn't know what to say, so they said nothing, which is unbelievable because Shir Shel Yom then is what Shir Shel Yom is right now, which is a parak of Tehillim. But they didn't want to say the wrong one, so they said nothing. That's approach number 1. They knew what day of the week it was. No, but and the Gra has a shita like this. Lamaisa, the Gra paskins this way. It's Minagar Yisrael. In Smicha, we did this. We said only the Shir Shel Yom of the day never doubles. So, for example, the Shir Shel Yom of Rosh Chodesh was Baruch Nafshi without regular Shir Shel Yom. Yeah, if you went through Sukkot, everyone had their own Shir Shel Yom. You didn't say the Tuesday and the day of Yontif. So that's this idea as well, that they didn't want to say the wrong Shira. And it wasn't just like, okay, it's Tuesday, everybody say Mizmor LaAsaf. It wasn't like that. Because if that day had a unique, by the this is a riot for the Gra. This Gemara is a riot for the Gra, that when you say Shir Shal Yom, it's not always going to be the day of the week, because when there's a competing factor on that day, it might be that there's a difference, as we will soon see, it might be that there's a difference in what Shir Shal Yom to say. But Reb Zera Omar, he said, no, it's not that they didn't say anything. It's She'amru Shira Shel Chol im Tamid Shel Bein Ho'arbayim. They said the weekday, let's say it was a Tuesday, they said the weekday's version of Shir Shel Yom with the Tamid Shel Bein Ho'arbayim, but really show a lavo, and they shouldn't have said Shir Shal Yom for a weekday, because really it was Rosh Hashana and they didn't know. Amar lo Reb Zera le'Ahava Berei. He says to his son's name was Ahava. It's very unique. Some families who name their children Love and River, and it was different. Ava Bar Masma, I think it was. It's strange then.
It's a girl's name.
Oh,
Nowadays it's a girl's name.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. These are Shilas. Great story from someone sitting in that base medrash. Rav Kanievsky told him that his middle name wasn't the name.
Yes.
And he changed his name, and okay, fine. However the Maisa goes. Right. So there are discussions if the baby's name is Yaakova, Binyamina. I know people with these names. We all know people with these names. These are good shilas. But clearly here, this name seems to be unisex, and that our Gemara is, unless this was a woman, but it's highly doubtful, right? Huh? Beret? Very good. That's not Bita. Very good. So this is definitely going to be a man. I assumed as much anyway.
According to Rabbi Feinstein, David and Yaakov are not names.
Right. Yeah.
The big shiloh on Iksuba.
The real shilas. Not so simple. Anyways, Amar lo Reb Zera la'ava berei. Reb Zera says to his son, I know that I'm right. Right about what? Remember, Reb Zera had said what mistake? What was the kilkul? The kilkul was that they said the wrong Shir Shal Yom. Not that they said nothing, but that they said something wrong. How do we know? So he says to his son, go tell them the Mishnah that I taught you. So he says, Pok tani lahu, go teach them the following brisa. Hiskinu, we have a brisa that says, Hiskinu shelo yuhu mekablan edus hachodesh. There's a brisa that says that the rabbis made a takana that they could not accept edus hachodesh el kadei sheyehei shehus, as long as there's time biyom to do all the following. Hakriv tmidinu musafin uviniskehem v'lomar shira shelo b'shibush, and to say shir shal yom without an error. So what was Reb Zera's argument from this brisa that he was right? That in fact they said something wrong and not that they said nothing. If you want to say that the mistake that he made was that he said the Shir Shal Yom for the weekday, when really he should have said the Shir Shal Yom for Rosh Hashana, that's called an error. But if you're dead silent, if you didn't say anything, my shibush ika, what kind of mistake is that? So that's not a mistake. You didn't do anything. You did a zero, says the Gemara. That's a terrible argument. Kevan de lo amar klal, ein l'cha shibush gadol mizeh. You whiffed. You totally missed the opportunity. That's a shibush also. So saying nothing and saying the wrong thing are both a shibush. So Reb Zera sent his son to go save Reb Zera's save a little face, and the Gemara says terrible argument, not a good argument. Let's try again. We're 2/3 of the way down. Lamed and Beis. If we have time before Mar, we'll wrap up till almost halfway down. But the Amud Aleph and Lamed Aleph is very quick. Masiv Ravacha bar Huna. Tamid shel Rosh Hashana Shachris Karev Kehilchaso. In the morning, everyone agrees that it's Karev Kehilchaso, a regular morning. That the Eidim hadn't come yet. We didn't expect them to come in the morning. That one got a regular Kehilchaso, a regular weekday. If it was a Tuesday, they said Mizmor Asaf, whatever it was. The Musaf Mahu Omer. What do they do by Musaf? So by Musaf, they would already change gears and say Harninu Leilukimu Zenu Hari Leilukeyako. B'Mincha Mahu Omer. What would they say by Mincha? So the Gemara says Kol Hashem Yachil Midbar. Now, what happens? Uvizman shechal Rosh Hashana lios bechamishi b'Shabbos she'ashira shelo harninu le'elkimu zenu. What do we do when it's Thursday? And the shira for that day for Rosh Hashana is also the same thing. So it says the Gemara, Lo haya omer shachris harninu. In the morning, if it was a Thursday and they were concerned that Rosh Hashana would have kicked in, they wouldn't say harninu. They wouldn't say that parak of Tehillim. Because if it in fact determined later to be Rosh Hashana in the afternoon, they would then have to say the same parak again. And for whatever reason, they didn't want to say the same parak twice. Elamahu Omer, what then would he say? He would say Hasirosim Yisevel Shechmal. Other psukim, it's actually part of the same parak, but other psukim, fine. What if in fact they did come after the Tamid Shel Shachar? Under those circumstances, it's okay to repeat. So says the Gemara. If you want to say that whenever we're in doubt, Amrina and Shira Dechol, then we should say the Shira of the morning. Hainu de Ka'amar Omro v'koflo. That is what our understanding would be, is when it says Omro v'koflo, when the Brisa says that there's a possibility of repeating. Eliyamar Slo Amar Klal, if, like the people in Bavel said, Targimu, like they said earlier, Targimu, that they didn't say anything, my Omer v'koflo. So we see that Reb Zera has to be right. It has to be that they said something and not said nothing, because you have to say something in order to double the something. 2 times 0 is 0. If you didn't say any shiur shel yom, there's no kofel, there's no doubling over. So it must be that Reb Zera is right. Says the Gemara, top of Lamed Aleph, shiny hasam de shira de yom. That's not necessarily true. It could be that even according to the Babylonians, that they would still have said shiur shel yom, because that's a normal thing to do in the morning, to say shiur shel yom, even if there's a risk of the Eidim coming that day. It's the 29th of the month, it's the 30th of the month. It's a reasonable time to assume Eidim would come. Doesn't matter. Shachar's time, you still say shiur shel yom, and even the Babylonians would agree. We'll learn this Gemara quickly. It'll take us until almost halfway down. Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Mishum Rabbi Akiva. Berishon Mohayu Omer. What was the shiur shel yom of Sunday? Lashem ha'aretzum lo'a. Why? Why do we say that perek? And I'll also add, why do we highlight this on Rosh Hashana and on Yom Kippur? We say it after Mariv with Chazanos and L'David Mizmor. It's like a whole, forever. Why do we do this? Says the Gemara, very clear. Al Shem Shekana, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, V'hikne, and he let us be the owners and run the world, V'shalit, although he still maintains control, Be'olama. A very sophisticated line of how Hashem runs the world. What do we do b'sheni on Mondays? Ma'yu omrim gadol Hashem umhulal me'od. Why do we say that on Mondays? Al shem shechilek ma'asav umalach aleihem. That he separated his actions and he ruled over them. So that's what the Gemara says, Shechilek Maisav. And what are we talking about here? We're talking about creation. Take a look at Rashi, Shechilek Maisav, about 15 lines down in the Rashis. Rashi says, Hivdil Rakia Ben Elyonim Letachtonim, the Psukim and Breshis. What about on Tuesdays, 5-6 lines down? B'shlishi Hayu Omrim Elokim Nitzav V'adas Kel. What is that pasuk referring to? Al Shem Shegila Eretz B'chochmaso Ve'echin Teva La'adaso. And he prepared the world La'adaso for his nation. That we should make sure that we have the world, that we have access to it. Our greatest goal of all, of course, is Kiddush Shem Shamayim. It's not about us. It's about utilizing what we have in order to be Mekadesh Shem Shamayim. I was in an Uber this week, and this African-American gentleman said, "What's the whole deal with you guys being the chosen people? What's going on there?" I had my Gemara open. I'm like, I got to prepare for Daf Yomi, but I didn't have to. I had to fulfill my other responsibilities. Anyways, we spoke about it at length, but that's what the Gemara says here, is that Behechin Teva La'adasa. That's why on Tuesdays we say that Perek Bervi Hayu Omrim. What did they say on Wednesdays? Kel Nekamos Hashem Al Shem Shebarachama Ulevana Ve'asi Lipara Me'ovdei. And this day in creation had to do with that, and the sun was created that day. And then says not light, but the sun was created that day. And Asi Lipara Me'ovdei, and that people will end up paying their price for serving these constellations. Bechamishi on Thursdays about Hayu Omrim Harninu Lelukim Uzeinu, as we saw from the Rosh Hashana Sugya. Why? Why is Lelukim Uzeinu? Al Shem Shabara Ofos V'Dagim L'Shabeach Lishmo. So that's the Harninu. They were giving Rina that L'Shabeach Lishmo. That's like Perek Shira style stuff that the animals would give praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Fine. B'Shishi on Fridays, Hayu Omrim Hashem Malach Kiyus Lavesh. Al Shem Shegomar Malachto Umalach Alein. It's the last day of creation. Shabbos is not a creative day; it's a restful day. So on the last day of creation, so says the Gemara that Malach Aleini, he took control over that. B'Shvi Hayu Omrim. What about the seventh day? What did we say there? Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos Liyom Shekula Shabbos. A reference to the future. Says Rashi. Take a look at Rashi just to the right, almost halfway down in the Rashi. Zibra Maschal Liyom Shekula Shabbos. An important Rashi to understand the next 10 lines. She'asid ha'olam liyos charev. The world will be destroyed. Ve'ein Adam. There's going to be no man. V'chol hamelachos shosos al oso yom omrim shir shel Shabbos. So Shabbos is ki'ilum ein olam haba. This pasuk is a reference to the future. Says the Gemara, absolutely not. Amar Rab Nechemya, Ma ra'u chachamim lechalek ben haprakim halalu. Why would they say that the first 6 prakim have to do with this world? The first 6 prakim of Shir Shal Yom, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they have to do with this world. And then Mizmor Shir Shabbos is talking la'asid lavo. That doesn't make any sense. Ella, therefore, it must be different. Berishona, on the first day, Shekana v'hiknev shali ba'olamo, the same as before, because the Kadosh Baruch Hu ruled over the world. B'sheni shechilik ma'asav v'malach alein, that Hashem separated the worlds and then He ruled over them. B'shlishi shegil eretz b'chochmas v'echin tevel adaso. On Tuesdays, it was because Hashem revealed His wisdom and prepared the world for His nation. But on Wednesdays, why did we say that particular Shir Shal Yom shebarachamo levana basi the parmei abdein that we discussed as well, because people were serving the sun and the moon on that day. The sun was created. That was Harninu, that there's Rina, that these animals will praise Hashem. Bishishi, halfway down, Lamed Aleph and Aleph. Bishishi shigamar malachta malach alein, that on Fridays he completed his work and he was done. But B'Shvi, when we say Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos, it's al Shem Sheshavas. It's not talking about the future, it's talking about the present. If it kamiflage, what are they arguing about with the Rav Katina? They were arguing about Rav Katina, Damar Rav Katina, Shisa Alfei Shane Hava Alma. The years of the world will be 6,000. V'chad Charuv. And the last 1,000 will be Charuv, will be destroyed. That's like the first shita that we saw, which says that the paragraph of Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos was speaking la'asid lavo. Shenemar v'niska b'Hashem levado b'yom. Hahu, yom is a reference to one of the thousands of years. We wouldn't have known this in Pshat, but that's how the Gemara understands it. And Amar Abai, no, Trey Charuv, there were 2,000 years that will be years of destruction. Feels like we kind of live in a partial year of destruction. I'm just saying the way the world is turning, every generation probably feels that way. Anyway, Shenemar Yechayenu miyomayim. The pasuk says 2 days, referencing each one 1,000 years, 2,000 years, and that's obviously going to be the second shot where the pasuk of Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos can't be talking about the future. We're going to stop right here, halfway down, right before the little cutout in the Gemara with the words b'musafei d'shabsa. We'll pick up tomorrow on Lamed Aleph and Aleph and Yirtzeh Hashem, depending on how well this works. I don't know how bad Lamed Beis will be. We'll see how far we get. Wishing you all a beautiful night.